welcome back. And if you're new to the channel, I'm a software engineer here in New York City. Now I'm here with my wife Tanya, and we're going to share some of our favorite books. And these books have been very valuable in our careers, so hopefully you'll find at least one book here that might be helpful for you. So the first book that I want to talk about here is one that Tanya is very familiar with because I mention it a lot, and that is Crushing It.
Talks about it all the time.
And it's a book by Gary Vaynerchuk, aka Gary V. It's called Crushing It. So it's a book about entrepreneurship. It's a book about actually sharing the stories of multiple entrepreneurs. So they're sharing their story about how they initially started before their success.
Okay.
And like the steps that they took and what they focused on to eventually be crushing it.
On my stack, I have something similar. It is in the company of women. Similar concept, but it's in the form of interview. The author is asking them questions, and then most of these questions revolve around challenges that they have experienced. It's of course very female oriented, but I think anyone would benefit from reading this book. It's just for a lot of girls, it's very challenging. You know, we don't have a lot of female entrepreneurs, specifically female entrepreneurs in tech.
That's right.
I think I counted about 3 interviews with women in tech, specifically in this book. But this book just centers around entrepreneurship to begin with, so not necessarily tech only, which is very interesting. You can learn about like designers, women who started their own social media platforms and whatnot.
So even if you're not an entrepreneur, if you're just in the tech industry, like whatever your piece is, it would be useful to you, right?
Yeah, one of my close friends, this is actually my second book because the first book I gifted to one of my close friends when she graduated with her MBA degree from business school.
Yeah,
so very good graduation gift for someone too.
And this book actually has a lot of meaning for me because the shirt that I'm wearing is like merged from my own company that I started about 3 or 4 years ago. But with like the initial launch, this is the book that started it for me because I was really kind of like in a down point in terms of creativity, in terms of entrepreneurship. There wasn't really any like major projects that I was working on. When I was actually listening to this book, because I listened to it on Audible, it was voiced by Damon John. So when I was listening to this book in the car on my commutes to work, right, to my like 9-to-5 job, I was thinking about starting something eventually, but one of the things that he preaches is like, don't wait too much.
Just start it.
Just do something, right?
Just do something. Yeah.
And that really, you know, talked to me, and I decided, okay, what am I personally passionate about? I was doing podcasting at the time. I was starting my podcast.
That's right.
And I was figuring, you know, I'm also a website developer, so I'm like, how do I combine the two to create a service that I'm passionate about, that I would continue to work on, that also, you know, potentially other people might find useful.
Yeah.
So that's why I really like this book. It's my favorite. I like the guy that's behind it. I think that's enough said about that one.
That's a good message. For me, it's also the message that, and what those women are talking about in their interview in the company of women, is how difficult it is because sometimes you need reality check. So I do like the combination of both, being inspired and being motivated by someone to get started, get you know, project going, your MVP out there, but also have very clear expectations that it might not yield results in terms of the profit for a very long time in certain cases. And this is what the girls are talking about, that for some of them, it was not an overnight success. People love to say overnight success. Yeah, overnight success that took, you know, 5-10 years, right?
Yeah.
So you got to be emotionally prepared for it, but it's worth it.
Very powerful book. Love it. Cool.
Yep. What do you have next?
So the second book, we actually got the signed copy to us recently.
Yeah.
This is from Scotty Crump.
Hey, Scotty.
He's actually one of Tanya's friend. He used to be your teacher, right? In your boot camp.
Scotty used to be my teacher assistant at the UNCC boot camp.
And this is something that actually, like, I started to get into. I was wondering, you know, I was very, like, you know, critical of this book.
He was skeptical.
Yeah, because
at first.
So what this book, first of all, what this book is about, it's about testing, right? About testing software. And it's about this specific library called React Testing Library from Ken C. Dodds, very known developer in the community. And this book is about how to use React Testing Library to simplify your testing code, your testing process.
So seems amazing. Why
Yeah.
were you skeptical?
I was skeptical because when it comes to books like this that are essentially like a course or tutorial, which I don't think this book is, that's only part of it. But for me, I like to just kind of dive in and learn on my own. But the problem with that is that it takes a long time to do that. So I've
You
written
Google everything though.
pretty
Like your
much, yeah.
style of learning is significantly different from mine. Someone like me would benefit from a book like that because of the way that I am studious and how I prefer to be learning new material. But for you, you just dive into it. You watch YouTube tutorials.
Yeah.
You Google it.
Yeah, but the thing about that is I've been writing with React Testing Library for maybe a year or so, maybe even longer. I still don't know like the full extent to the library, all the tools, all the like the right way to do things. And so what this book does is it kind of just cuts that time, probably like tenfold, or divided by 10. I don't. What's the opposite of that? But anyway, so what this book does is it just gives you all of like the shortcuts. It tells you what the right way to use the library, what are the methods that you want to pull in from it, any other tools in the community too. There's other tools that he mentions that are like over time have become the known standards or what people gravitate towards.
I do not know.
But for when I was learning the library, it's something that I had to come across. I was looking at different alternatives, which one is better, I don't know, I had to figure that out on my own. So I really like the way the book is written, the way it just condenses all that material. It gives you all the code samples, everything that you might need. And it's nice to just have this sitting by on your desk or nearby you, because if you're having any issues with your day job or just as you're writing tests, you can just reach for it, figure out, okay, I'm in end-to-end testing. He mentioned Cypress in one of the chapters. How do I integrate React Testing Library with Cypress? So a lot of really great stuff. And yeah, just, Scotty Chrome, good job on this.
Keep writing.
Yeah, and we'll have obviously a link to this so you can support Scotty, and a link to all the other books in the description, of course. Since we're still on the topic of testing, I think Tanya has a couple of books as well related to that.
Oh yeah, so I was a QA before, and there are at least two books that came in very handy. So book number one, Testing Computer Software. This is widely available, very popular. I think I have one of the older editions. So if you are a QA and you're a newbie, you're about to either get started or you have been on the job for a year or so and you still would like to figure out the depth of all of the quality assurance testing world, I highly recommend this book. This is more like instructional recipe for you to do your work pretty much. So I would recommend it for someone who is just getting started. Because it gives you examples. It also tells you what are the different methods of testing, all kinds of testing with the good examples you can find here. It's a pretty hefty book, but I would highly recommend to read that before you start any type of formal educational process with the QA. I know that there are lots of QA courses now available. People think that in 2 to 4 months you would truly learn what it's like to be QA. I think you can get introduced like this to a profession, but it would require some pre-work. Do pre-work as much as you can. That's just what I'm used to.
And does it talk about testing from like a broader sense too? It's not just talking about how to do it, right? It's talking about like what it is, why it's important.
I would say so that it does, but not as much in depth as the second book.
Okay.
That's why I would recommend both books, honestly, at the same time. So Agile Testing, a practical guide for testers and Agile teams. This book still has lots of my notes from work, and it is dedicated to you as a tester in the SDLC cycle to begin with, and you as a part of the dev team. It is a good, I have kind of like a trick for you. I use this book also to prepare for my mid-year and end of the year reviews.
Okay.
Because you need to write, a poem about yourself, a bragging poem, so to speak, about yourself, and you have to figure out all of the different ways and the way you have contributed to team success and you delivered value to the customer, whoever your customer is. But sometimes some people are not that great when it comes to the writing. Especially writing about yourself is quite difficult, right? Some of us are braggers for sure, and some of us are staying very humble. So this book definitely came in handy when I needed to figure out, okay, what is it exactly that I did great? Because it tells you who is the great QA in great detail. Someone who would contribute not just by knowing what different tests that they can perform, but also how can they be effective part of the dev team.
So it's a great duo for computer testing. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's a lot. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot, but testing is all about being curious and detail-oriented. So if you are a reader, if you're an avid reader and you like to read a lot, that also tells me that you could be a good tester.
Right.
Not necessarily exclusive,
Yeah.
but
And you mentioned mid-year reviews, you mentioned, being humble. This is why I picked up this book, because I am someone that has a hard time talking about myself in such a, like talking, good things about myself and boasting about
selling yourself.
Yeah, so what this book does, so this book is by Chris Voss, and he actually did a master class as well, which we started watching a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it's all the same ideas that he's trying to present there. So essentially, he worked in the FBI. He was a negotiator, specifically in hostage negotiation situations. And through that experience, he learned a lot of lessons about how to negotiate. And I think it's really cool that he takes his FBI experience and takes it to everyday life. So this book tells you how to negotiate in everyday life, whether that's in your mid-year review, you're trying to get a salary raise or some kind of promotion.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Whether you're trying to, I don't know, like get your deposit back on something that was canceled. Maybe you're trying to, I don't know, just get a lower price on something. So this is the book that lets you do that. And it's soft skills based, which I feel like is very important for software engineers, for QA analysts, for really anyone in the tech industry.
Yeah, I think in our field, soft skills cannot be downplayed. Definitely. And
Yeah,
I remember there was
uh-huh.
a great master class that we watched. I rewatched it.
Yeah, and he starts off the master class, telling you about techniques like mirroring, using the words that the other person is saying to kind of continue the conversation,
Does
get
he
the
do the
person
same
to
thing
like
in
you.
the book?
Same lessons there. Now, I didn't finish the master class, so I don't know exactly if it's one-to-one, but I definitely already got my money back for this book because
Oh yes, I negotiated some.
I negotiated some money, lower prices and whatnot on things. So really great book. I recommend it for anyone that's trying to influence people, trying to learn how to even just speak to people. I'm not great at that, so this is a book that just basically increases your communication, negotiation, and influential skills. So I really love this book. I do also have a book that's somewhat related. So this is a book that has been, I think, the most popular last year in 2020 because due to COVID, a lot of people started working remotely and they haven't worked remotely before. So what you have to do with remote work, if you haven't done it before, is to build really strong habits. You have to be really smart about how you're productive, how you're using your time, how, during which time do you do certain tasks, how do you associate those tasks with other tasks. And so this book talks about it all. It's similar to, Scotty Crump's book, where James Clear, he just provides you all this information in a condensed format. And what I like is that just pretty much with all these books, they're all actionable. You can start reading the book and you don't have to finish it to start getting value out of it.
I see. Okay.
Even this book, I think I'm 3/4 of the way in. I have a bookmark in there currently. But I already feel like I already learned so much, how to build, smart habits. And just I think this is something that I recommend for pretty much any person to be productive.
That's so funny. I have a story about Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. When I first saw Sunny reading Never Split the Difference, I thought that it's about slicing stories. And I thought it's about like moving stories, splitting stories, and moving story
an
from one
Agile
sprint
book,
to
right?
another. And I thought, oh, okay, so he's studying Agile book,
Right.
right? Like all of the techniques, how to slice.
Yeah,
do
and
vertical
all that
slicing.
title means, and it's pretty funny, but all that title means is just don't settle, don't settle for less. Just negotiate your full way, because you don't want to meet in the middle and compromise when both halves are not what either person wants.
Yeah, yeah.
If one person gets 100% one time, another person gets 100% another time, that's a better situation. So I mean, in the grand scheme of things, never split the difference.
Okay. And don't split the stories.
Or that, yeah. Speaking of stories, right?
Speaking of stories, here's a great book for you. Comparatively, look at the size of previous books that I recommended, right? And this one. So I get better, I promise.
Right, right.
This is pretty easy. I finished it in one weekend. It's Agile Scrum. Deliver products in short cycles with rapid adaptation to change, fast time to market, and continuous improvement.
Ooh.
Well, to be honest with you, this is more like Agile Scrum for not only Scrum Masters, but for QAs, for developers, for POs, for BOs. If you're part of that world, go ahead and just get it. I got it because I needed a quick freshen up for my interview for Scrum Master position. And even though you can be a practicing Agilist, you can be a Scrum Master yourself, Agile coach, sometimes you just need a little pick-me-up before the interview or again for your media reviews just to double check.
Because there are things that you forget, right? So during the
Definitely.
interview, you're like, oh yeah, it's fresh in my mind. I remember the exact, way that you do this in Agile.
Yeah, because sometimes, sometimes you just don't have that image, that picture in front of your eyes, telling you, okay, this is what the cycle looks like. Oh, this is when I do inspect and adapt. Or you would be forgetting something that, your sprint goals should be basically kind of aligned with the broader idea of what you got to be doing during the PI planning, but that goes into the roadmap for the year or the quarter, depending on your cycles. And then it goes together with the larger platform vision for the year, right? You might not remember that from the top of your head unless you have been, a practicing Scrum Master or release train engineer for many, many years. But what if you just need to quickly answer some questions right before the interview or before your reviews? Just go ahead and get it, honestly. It wasn't a big deal to read through all of this, very nicely written. Just the same way, like you mentioned, it's more like instructional suggestions, right? But you can quickly get value out of it because you can just go into table of contents and see.
It's more of like a reference, a guide.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, there is another thing that was useful. In our world, we have so many different acronyms or so many different things and terminologies. So there was index at the back where you can just quickly look up all of the different definitions. Because someone asked me, there were a couple of questions, my job a couple of days ago, and someone asked me some very obscure, terminology, and I honestly had no idea, even though I've been doing this for a while. And this book gave me the answer. It turns out it was pretty easy, just a different way of calling something that you already knew about.
I'm not a fan of so many acronyms, but it's true. Every company has them at any size. Very cool. So we're kind of getting at this point to more fun books or more books that I like. For example, with these books, I honestly just like the designs. Not all books have to be something that you read, diligently.
So you don't want to get a Chanel coffee book that costs $200 and just place it on the coffee table.
Just for the
just
coffee table.
Sits there.
Which
Instagram pictures.
Which is another one that I'll talk about in a minute. But for these books, which I would say they're more kind of like magazines.
On top.
Yeah. So Increment, which is part of Stripe, which is a company that I've used for Iron Mike and just for various things. Really great company, and there's a publishing, division of it that makes books about tech, software engineering, software reliability, But they also have some stuff like remote work, or the one that you're holding. Yeah, that's the one, remote work.
How can engineers ace their remote job interviews? Ooh,
So this is more of
that's
like
interesting.
a magazine. The covers and everything and the graphics are very pretty, of course, but
Very good
there's a
quality.
really great content in here.
You know what it reminds me of?
Mm-hmm.
Medium, but in a periodical format.
For sure.
Very good, well-written
It's like articles, a group of articles, yeah.
And the people who are writing these articles are, senior and staff engineers at Google,
Exactly.
Amazon, all the reputable companies.
Yeah, you got principal engineers, you got CEOs, CTOs, etc.
Smells so good.
Yeah.
Is this a new one because it smells
Yeah,
pretty
the
fresh?
one that I've been reading recently is obviously on front-end development and also software architecture. And I think with software architecture, we're like at the park, just picnicking outside, and I was reading, I think it was about software architecture because that's the book that was talking about how computers started. And you had the book about women, the company of women, right?
Yep.
And how women aren't really prominent in the tech industry, but they're the ones that actually started it all.
Yeah, it used to be very different.
They were the initial programmers, the inventors of different aspects of computer architecture and just hardware. So
I think honestly that's because, my personal opinion, this is probably kind of like evolved around from the secretary and typist position.
Yeah, I
Because
remember
we
mentioning
had those typing machines, and they probably thought at that time in the society that this is like a secondary, like okay, here we have a little cameo from our cat. Sorry about that. They probably thought, oh, this is a secondary position. Let me just give it to my secretary. Let get her take there.
Right, and they're like, oh, this is cool. No, let's take it back.
Yeah, let's take it back. All of the male engineers.
And I guess you're occupied right now with Loki being on top of your books.
I
unless you
can
grab
get one book out from under him. This is the project management book. Here we go. All right, so this is a pretty big one. This is to study for your PMP certification exam. I never took one, and I never went to, get certification to school. Why? Because I think working in the tech field, you are not required to get certification like this. I think it was all the rage about 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Now, honestly, just get the book, study it if you want to get into that field, but we're moving away from project management positions more into either product owners or Scrum Masters, to be honest with you, and Agile coaches. So it depends which part of the development cycle you like in terms of managing projects, but we're not managing projects anymore. It's kind of like a built-in value where we're delivering pieces of software, we're delivering value to the customer, and our customer can be, a consumer, or it could be, internal-oriented applications. But this one is just more like a Bible for project management. So lots of the things, even though environment has changed and we're using different framework right now, this would be very useful for someone even outside of the tech field. Just to see how you can influence production, what is there to learn, teaches you a lot on the business and the business aspect of things in terms of funding too.
Nice.
Yeah, which is very important.
Yeah, the project management comes it's a very old framework, honestly. There are multiple frameworks, but the idea of project management is extremely old, like factory lines, right, when you had to manage that body of work.
Still used in a lot of industries.
Yeah.
But for tech, I would say have it, read it when you can. It's not required for you to pass the exam or course, but it's a good book to read. And
the last book that I have, so this is a coffee table book. This is something that you can look through. One time our friend actually visited. I took this out. We looked through it a little bit. So it's something that's
a conversation
really
starter.
fun, to have people over and just to share. But this is a book from Complex, right? They are famous for the magazine, for a lot of stuff online. And I'm into sneakers a little bit. I'm not the person that has like 20 or like 50 pairs, but I like Yeezys, I like Air Jordans and things like that. So this book,
I like these too.
this book just goes through like every year and talks about just the most prominent sneaker that has defined that year. So a lot of
why are you recommending it? Why do you like it? Why do you like
this
to
is like pretty much
peruse
first
through the pages?
this is just something that really gets you creative sometimes, right? So you need
Why do you think so?
different colors, different like inspiration from other artists, because I'm a software engineer, which isn't really thought of as a creative industry or a creative job, but being able to see more from like a design perspective, or seeing maybe how it applies just to other things in your life. I just like the multi like faceted aspect of just having books that might inspire you, outside indirectly to your job.
The reason why I was asking is because we actually talked about this at length with Sunny at home. We discussed how the books that we have, the collection that we have, which is just a part of it, to be honest. We didn't share everything that we have. A lot of these books are job-oriented, just educational, all about the environment that we're in. But also a lot of the ones that we're not sharing with you are inspirational books. And by inspirational, I mean sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you feel absolutely unproductive, unmotivated, and you're in a rut, like you're stuck. I would just open up a book that I have about New York City, or there is a good book, Patterns of India, that I have on the side, or
There's even one that you got me
paintings.
for my birthday too.
Oh,
so
the watches.
right, I like some watches from time to time, and this is a book
If you're
that
a
also
collector, that would really, and it's
nice.
strange, but you open up a page and you see a beautiful, the image of tulips blooming somewhere, right, in Netherlands, and it gets you going, gets you inspired. Especially this year when we were stuck. At a certain point, we couldn't go outside, we couldn't go to museums because we were quarantining at home. So your kind of window to life is your TV, your phone, but it's different, honestly, when you touch the book. To me, it's just a different sensation. And you just go pages by pages, and you're seeing either beautiful places in some of the books that we have that are dedicated to travel, or you're seeing beautiful images of New York City. So this is my favorite book. In the morning after my stand-ups, I have a couple of minutes to, drink my coffee. And this is usually what I would do. I would open up the book that I have read 300 times, of course. But the reason I still keep it around is because of the beautiful photography inside. Yeah, and especially if this is something very bright, like pictures of street art, for instance. If you're quarantining, you cannot go outside, or you're sick, this is another thing that I would like to do. Just look at the bright pictures. Bright colors. There's something about bright colors that just activates different parts of your brain, and the way you start thinking about the problem. For instance, as an engineer, you get your creative brain going. Like your creativity is off the charts. So highly recommend to get the book with bright colors.
Yeah.
I know it's strange, but
and
like
New
patterns
York
and
has
bright
so
colors.
much really beautiful architecture. A lot of great buildings of different colors. Nothing is really ever the same. But I think that's pretty much it. Those are some of our favorite books. I'm sure we'll do another video at some point in the future talking about other books that we like or other types of books. But share us some of your favorite books with us too.
What are your suggestions?
Yeah, we're both going to be looking in the comments and responding there. If you're interested in any of these books, make sure that you check them out in the description below. We'll link them there. And with that, we'll see you in the next video. Peace.
Bye.